So, shadow work. What a cool name, right? What a mysterious name. Some of you I know are already doing some form of shadow work as part of your personal growth and development. Some of you have heard of it. You're not quite sure exactly what it is. Your imagination kind of puts some things out there. And some of you just have no idea. But I think shadow work, in fact, I know shadow work is really essential for us to become whole human beings. And in the work that I do around purpose, there's no way to bypass shadow work. Now, what I want to do here is just talk a little bit about what it is from my point of view. Shadow work in the modern sense really comes from a lot of the work of Carl Jung. And this video is not really an academic explanation of Jung, but I do want to call on Jung because he kind of is the modern Bible when it comes to exploring shadow work. I'm going to open with a quote from Jung, who said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. At all counts, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intentions." Okay, there's so much there, right? I want to call attention to the fact that Jung used the word embodied and unconscious versus conscious, right? This is really key. This is really key, is understanding that there are things that are in our awareness that are conscious and things that are not in our direct awareness. They're unconscious. And this is really important because the essence of shadow work is the process of bringing things that are in that unconscious space into the light of our awareness. That's my nutshell definition of shadow work. But what I want to do is give a little bit more of an explanation of shadow work from my point of view in kind of real simple language. I don't want to use the language of academic psychology or anything like this. I just want to talk about the essence of shadow work as I've come to understand it. And maybe it will resonate with you. Okay? So here's how I want to frame it for you. I want you to think about the fact, this idea that you are actually a little pocket of consciousness, of infinite awareness, locked, at least temporarily, locked into this very finite point of our human body, filtering the world through our five senses. So, in other words, there's this essence of you, of your consciousness, of your awareness that is limitless, is infinite, that temporarily has to experience the world in a very finite and limited way. And I truly believe that we have this impulse that's always there to expand back into our wholeness. But here's the tension, here's the frustration. From the moment we're born, we're kind of trying to journey back into this wholeness, right? This little seed of consciousness that for a temporary span of time is locked into this suit, limited by the five senses. It's constantly trying to explore and expand and express and experience that wholeness again. And just look at the curiosity of kids, the infinite curiosity of kids, the openness, the hunger to grow, to expand that's there. But what happens? The older we get, the less and less freedom we have to do that exploration. And at some point, as we grow, we get slapped again and again and again by these programs that are telling us, hey, no, you're just small you. You better follow the rules. You're separate. You're alone. What defines you is what's in here. Okay? So just chill out. Calm down and follow the rules. In other words, it doesn't seem to be in society's interest that we're all out here expanding and exploring, right? So what happens? We internalize these rules, these paradigms, these ideas, and that doesn't stop the impulse to expand. So there's this tension, and this tension or this impulse to grow, to expand, to connect to our wholeness meets up with these imposed and internalized rules. And so there's some moralizing that begins to happen around this. And we're told, and then we start to believe that it's actually wrong to have this impulse, that this thought that I had, this feeling that I have, that's not appropriate, right? When in its essence, there's nothing impure about it. It's just this impulse taking form, but we have labeled it or categorized it as something wrong against those rules or against those paradigms. So what do we have to do? We have to repress it. We have to push it down, and we have to lock it down there out of the light in the unconscious. So these are actually aspects of ourself, aspects of our own universal impulse that we have decided are not appropriate, that are not right, that are not acceptable. And we've stuck them down in what I call our dungeon, right? We've locked them into their little cell in the dungeon. And we've kind of forgotten about them. They're unconscious. They're not in our everyday awareness, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. And that doesn't mean that they're not affecting us. And this is what Jung meant when he said, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intentions. So we can try to bypass, we can try to ignore those little, faint screams we hear now and then from the dungeon and go about our lives. But guess what? That's a gravity that's constantly affecting us. It's constantly influencing how we're interpreting and perceiving the world around us. So instead, here's the essence of shadow work and why it's essential. Shadow work means a family reunion. And what I mean by that is finding all of these orphaned pieces of yourself that you've locked away in that dungeon, looking them in the eye, telling them that it's okay, that they have a home with you, and that they can come back up into the light with you. This is the act of bringing them into awareness. Of course, this is my metaphor because I think it's so powerful. And here's what happens. Here's what happens when you can do this work, which is not easy, is that orphan had innate power and innate clarity. After all, it's part of that infinite awareness and consciousness that you are. And you had been locking away a piece of that power, a piece of that clarity. And so by inviting them back into the light of awareness, you are actually inviting that full power back. And this is where we can, ironically, begin to experience that sense of wholeness again by bringing the family of us back together, back into the light of our awareness. And here's the thing, when we do this, as an adult, this doesn't mean that if we locked something away when we were a kid because it was what we perceived as a really negative or maybe even a violent impulse, it doesn't mean that like, okay, yeah, now we can act out on that impulse. No, it means that now with our intelligence and skillfulness, we can channel that energy in a productive way, maybe towards our purpose, maybe towards our mission, right? So this is really the essence of shadow work. It takes time. There's not one magical way to do it. And be leery of anyone who tries to tell you that there's only one way to do shadow work. Any work that is helping you bring those unconscious, locked up orphans of yourself back into your awareness and consciousness, that's shadow work. That's shadow work. There are practices that I do and facilitate that I consider shadow work, including breath work, including many types of meditation, visualization, etc. But there are many ways, and I believe all legitimate wisdom traditions from around the world, from whatever culture, have a way of incorporating shadow work, because there's really no way to be a whole human being without shadow work. And I'm going to close this with another quote by Jung, and it really emphasizes the fact that this is a long and difficult process, but it's also very worth it. So Jung says, "We naively suppose the people are as we imagine them to be. We must continue to learn until every Jekyll can see his Hyde. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge, and it therefore, as a rule, meets with considerable resistance. Indeed, self-knowledge as a psychotherapeutic measure frequently requires much painstaking work extending over a long period. So, in other words, be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. And as you open up to this idea of making the unconscious conscious and facing some of those things that maybe you forgot were there, or maybe you sensed were there but thought were unfaceable, just know that there are tools, there are communities, there are spaces, and there are ways to do this that you don't have to do it alone. And feel free to share with me in the comments any thoughts or experiences with shadow work that you have. I'm always eager to learn, and good luck on your journey.